My name is Olivia Parker, and I'm 29 years old. I've worked my entire adult life to build something stable, something that could never be taken away from me. I came from nothing, and when I say nothing, I mean nights eating cereal for dinner because mom spent the grocery money on my brother's soccer trips, or because she forgot again. Growing up, I learned early that in our house, Ethan, my younger brother, was the sun, and everything revolved around him. Mom adored him, spoiled him, and defended him, even when he was cruel. And I was just there. The responsible one. The quiet one. The one who didn't need as much. After college, I moved across the country to start fresh. I built a career in digital marketing one late night at a time. No one handed me anything. I clawed my way up from a $32,000 entry-level job to a six-figure salary managing big campaigns. I never bragged about it. I didn't even post my promotion online. My mom and I talked maybe once every few weeks, mostly small talk. I sent her money sometimes when she asked, for bills, for groceries, for Ethan's car repairs. It was never much, but enough to make me feel like a good daughter. Then one day, everything shifted. It started with a Facebook post, innocent enough. My company had posted a Meet Our Marketing Team photo, celebrating a campaign that won an award. My mom commented under it, so proud of my successful daughter. I smiled when I saw it. Maybe she was proud of me. But the next morning, she called, her voice sugary sweet in a way I hadn't heard since I was a kid. "Olivia, honey, how's my favorite girl?" she said. That was my first red flag. Mom only used that tone when she wanted something. I said cautiously, "I'm good, Mom. What's going on?" "Oh, nothing, sweetheart. I just saw that big company post about you. You must be doing so well there." I laughed lightly. "Yeah, it's been going okay. We just wrapped a big project." There was a pause. Then, in that half-joking, half-serious tone she always used when she was fishing, she said, "So, how much do you make these days, anyway?" My stomach tightened. She'd never asked that before. Mom, that's kind of personal," I said carefully. "Oh, come on," she laughed. "You can tell your mother. I just want to be proud of you." I hesitated, but like an idiot I told her. Maybe I wanted her to finally see me the way she saw Ethan. Maybe I thought she'd be happy for me. So I said it my actual number. There was silence for a few seconds. Then she said softly, "Wow, you make that much?" I smiled nervously. "Yeah, I guess I've been lucky." But her tone changed completely. The warmth evaporated. "Lucky? Olivia, you're making that kind of money, and your mother's struggling to keep a roof over her head? And your brother's trying to get back on his feet." I froze. "Mom, what are you talking about? You've never said you were struggling." "Oh, please," she interrupted sharply. "You know how hard it's been since your father left. We don't all have fancy jobs like you. You could at least help out your family." I didn't know what to say. "Mom, I already help out sometimes. But I have my own rent, my own expenses." Her voice went icy. "You wouldn't even have that job if it weren't for me. I raised you, fed you, kept a roof over your head. You owe me, Olivia." That word, "oh," hit like a slap. I hung up soon after, shaking. I tried to brush it off, thinking she was just emotional. But 2 days later, I found out she wasn't just talking. She was coming. It was a Saturday afternoon when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I looked through the peephole, my stomach dropped. Mom stood there, suitcase in hand, and next to her, smirking like a spoiled prince, was Ethan. I opened the door, stunned. "Mom? Ethan? What are you doing here?" Mom smiled like she owned the place. "Surprise. We thought we'd visit my successful daughter." I stared at them, speechless. "Without telling me?" She brushed past me like it was her house. Ethan followed, dragging his suitcase across my hardwood floor. He dropped it in my living room and flopped onto the couch. "Nice place," he said casually, already pulling out his phone. "Mom," I said firmly, "what's going on?" She turned to me with that innocent smile I'd seen too many times. "Oh, don't be dramatic, Olivia. We just wanted to spend some time with you. You never come home anymore." I crossed my arms. You didn't tell me you were coming. You can't just show up like this. She sighed, setting her purse on my counter. Honestly, Olivia, you've changed. Money's made you cold. We're family, we shouldn't need an invitation. I bit back my frustration. I didn't want to fight. So I said, fine. You can stay for a few days. But please don't just assume. She cut me off. Perfect. We'll get settled in. That few days turned into a week. Then 2. Ethan barely lifted a finger. He slept until noon, used my TV all day, and ordered food on my Uber Eats account without asking. Mom cooked a few meals at first, mostly to show she was helping, but soon she joined him, lounging, criticizing my furniture, my clothes, my uptight lifestyle. It was exhausting. But the worst came one morning about 3 weeks in. I was sitting at my laptop in the kitchen, finishing a client report, when Mom walked in holding a coffee mug and said casually, "So I've been thinking, since you're doing so well, maybe it's time you help your brother get back on track." I looked up. "What do you mean?" "Well, Ethan's been having trouble finding work," she said sweetly. "You could give him a little loan to help him out." I frowned. "How much is a little?" "Oh, nothing crazy," she said with a dismissive wave. "Maybe 10,000. Just to help him get a car and maybe start something." I nearly laughed. "Mom, that's not a little amount. And Ethan's 30, not a child. He can work." Her smile vanished. "You can't be serious. You have all this money, and you're being selfish?" "Selfish," I said incredulously. "I've let you both live here rent-free for weeks." Ethan looked up from the couch, muttering, "You act like you're doing us a favor." My blood boiled. "I am doing you a favor, Ethan. You haven't even applied for a job." Mom slammed her mug down. "Enough.
Don't talk to your brother that way.
He's been through a lot." "Oh, please," I snapped. "He's been lazy his entire life, and you've enabled it." That was the moment Mom's face changed, like I'd betrayed her. "You ungrateful child," she hissed. "Everything you are is because of me, and this is how you treat me." I stood up, shaking. "Mom, you can't guilt me into giving you money. I've worked for this. You didn't help me get here." She looked at me coldly. "Then maybe I was wrong to think family means anything to you." She stormed off to the guest room. I stood there, my chest tight, my hands trembling. Ethan just smirked and said quietly, "You'll regret this." That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how it had come to this. How the people who were supposed to love me could twist something as simple as success into a weapon against me. But deep down, something inside me hardened. They thought they could manipulate me,
Guilt me.
control me with family ties. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the quiet, obedient daughter anymore. I was done being used. And I was about to show them exactly what happens when you push the wrong person too far. For the next few days after that fight, the atmosphere in my apartment felt heavy, like walking through fog that smelled faintly of resentment and stale coffee. Mom and Ethan kept mostly to themselves, but I could feel it, the tension, the silent judgment. Every time I came out of my room, they'd go quiet, whispering until I left. I tried to keep my cool. I told myself I could wait it out, that eventually they'd get bored and go home. But I was wrong. By the end of the week, things got worse. One morning, I woke up to the sound of voices in the living room. It was early, around 7, and I could hear Mom's laughter. When I walked out, she was on FaceTime, showing my apartment to one of her friends. "And look at this place, can you believe it?" she was saying. "All from her fancy job. You'd think she'd remember who helped her get here." Her friend laughed. "You must be so proud." "Oh, I am," Mom said with a bitter smile. "But she's gotten a little too independent, if you know what I mean. Doesn't even help her own family." I froze in the hallway, hearing every word. My throat tightened. I didn't say anything. I just turned, went back to my room, and shut the door quietly. Later that day, when I left for work, Ethan was sitting on the couch playing video games. He barely looked up. "Hey, can you grab me something on your way back?" "I'm starving." "Grab it yourself," I said coldly. He paused the game and glared. What's your problem? My problem, I said evenly, is that you're living in my house like it's a hotel and acting like I owe you something.
He smirked.
Maybe you do. Mom says. I cut him off sharply. I don't care what Mom says. His smirk vanished, replaced by that same entitled look I'd seen my whole life. You think you're better than us now, huh? I know I'm different, I said. Because I work for what I have. He rolled his eyes and went back to his game. Whatever. You've always been dramatic. I left for work seething. By the time I got to my office, I was so angry I could barely focus. My coworker, Jenna, noticed right away. Whoa, she said, handing me coffee. Rough morning. I forced a smile. Family stuff. She leaned against my desk. Say no more. Family can be worse than strangers sometimes. I sighed. You have no idea. I didn't tell her everything, not yet. But she could see it on my face. The exhaustion. The betrayal. That evening, when I got home, Mom was waiting for me at the kitchen table with a folder of papers. Sit, she said firmly. I hesitated. What's going on? She pushed the folder toward me. I've done the math. You make a lot more than you need. You can easily afford to help us out. I stared at her. You did the math? She nodded. I looked up the cost of living in this city. Even after rent and taxes, you still have plenty left. All we're asking is for you to give us what's fair. What's fair? I repeated, incredulous. Yes, she said calmly. A monthly contribution. Maybe $2,000. It's only right. I laughed, but it wasn't the amused kind. It was hollow, disbelieving. You want me to give you $2,000 a month? Her eyes flashed. Don't say it like that. It's not giving. It's family support. It's time you gave back for everything I've done for you. I stood slowly. Mom, you didn't put me through college. You didn't pay for my rent. You didn't even help when I was broke and working 2 jobs. You don't get to demand anything from me now. Her tone sharpened. You've become selfish. I didn't raise you like this. I took a deep breath. You raised me to survive. And that's exactly what I'm doing, surviving without anyone's help. She slammed her hand on the table. You're a disgrace, Olivia. You think because you have money, you can talk to me like this. I met her eyes. I think because I have self-respect, I don't have to let you manipulate me anymore. For a moment, the room was dead silent. Then she stood up, trembling with fury.
Fine.
But don't come crying when you end up alone. Money won't keep you warm at night. I wanted to say something, but I didn't. I just turned and walked away. That night, I locked my bedroom door. I sat on my bed, heart racing, wondering how my own mother could twist love into debt. But I knew her and I knew she wasn't done. The next morning, I woke up early and went to make coffee. My wallet, which I always left on the counter, was gone. Panic shot through me. I checked my purse, my jacket, the drawers. Nothing. Then I saw Ethan's door was half open. My gut told me everything I needed to know. I knocked once. Ethan, I said, trying to keep calm. Did you take my wallet? He didn't even look up from his phone. Nope. Don't lie to me. He shrugged. Maybe you misplaced it. My jaw clenched. I walked straight to his nightstand, opened the drawer, and there it was. My wallet. I grabbed it. Unbelievable. He stood up, scowling. What the hell? You can't just. I cut him off. You stole from me. I borrowed it, he snapped. You've got plenty. That word again, plenty. Like my hard work made me an ATM. Mom came rushing in, hair messy, robe half open. What's going on? Your son stole my wallet, I said, shaking with anger. Mom turned to Ethan, then back to me. I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. Don't make a big deal out of nothing. Nothing.
I yelled.
He took cash out of it, Mom. She crossed her arms. You can afford it. That was it. That was the moment something in me snapped, like a wire pulled too tight. You know what? I said quietly. Get out. Mom's eyes widened. Excuse me? You heard me. Both of you. Get out of my house. She gasped. Olivia, you don't mean that. I do, I said firmly. You've disrespected me, stolen from me, and treated me like I'm nothing but a wallet. I'm done. Ethan muttered. Wow, real nice. Throw your family out. I turned to him, my voice low but deadly calm. You stopped being my family when you started stealing from me. Mom tried to guilt me one last time. If your father could see you now. I laughed bitterly. If Dad could see me now, he'd tell me I finally learned how to stand up for myself. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I pointed at the door.
Out. Now.
They didn't move right away. But I didn't flinch. I stood there, arms crossed, until finally Ethan rolled his eyes, grabbed his bag, and muttered something under his breath. Mom followed, glaring like she was the victim. Before she stepped out, she turned to me. You'll regret this, Olivia. You don't turn your back on family and get away with it. I held her gaze. Watch me. When the door shut behind them, I stood there for a long time, shaking. Not from fear, but from release. For the first time, I felt free. But that feeling didn't last. Because 2 days later, I got a call from HR. Hey, Olivia, my manager said awkwardly. I just wanted to let you know we've been getting some strange emails. Someone claiming you've been committing fraud in your campaigns. My blood ran cold. What? That's insane. I know. We're investigating, but the messages came from someone claiming to be a family member. I hung up, my hands trembling. There was only one person twisted enough to do something like that.
Mom.
I stared at my phone. The last text from her still unread. You'll regret this. And that's when I realized this wasn't over. My mother wasn't just angry. She was declaring war. And I was done playing nice. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with my laptop open, the glow from the screen reflecting off a half-empty coffee mug. My stomach churned as I reread the HR email, my hands trembling so badly that I could barely type. Someone had sent anonymous accusations to my company, saying I'd falsified invoices, stolen funds, and manipulated sales reports for personal gain. The accusations were absurd, easily disproven, but the damage was already there. Rumors were spreading. I could feel it. And the worst part? They had included private details, things only someone close to me could know. My mother knew. At that moment, something inside me hardened. For years, I had been the quiet one, the good daughter. The one who didn't argue, who carried the weight of the family's failures without complaint. But now, watching my career, the thing I'd built from nothing, being threatened by the very people who should have been proud of me, I knew I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I wouldn't fight them with anger or shouting. I'd fight them with intelligence, the way they'd never expect me to. The next day, I went to work like nothing had happened. I smiled at my boss, joined the team meeting, answered every question with calm precision. When he pulled me aside afterward, I told him I was happy to cooperate with the investigation and provide all records immediately. He nodded, impressed. You're handling this very professionally, Olivia. Most people would be a wreck right now. Oh, I said with a small smile. I've dealt with worse. And I meant it. After work, I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and opened my laptop again. But this time, I wasn't panicking. I was planning. I started with my mom's social media. She was the kind of person who couldn't resist posting every little thing. Inspirational quotes about loyalty and family, passive-aggressive jabs about ungrateful children, and selfies with Ethan captioned, "My true pride." Then I saw it, a post from the day before. A picture of her and Ethan in front of a new car. The caption read, "God provides when your own kids turn their back on you." I felt my jaw tighten. The car was expensive, way out of their budget. I knew what that meant. She was using money she didn't have, or worse, money she thought she could have if she got what she wanted from me. A plan started forming in my mind, not out of revenge, but out of survival. I needed to protect myself, my reputation, and my peace. So I started documenting everything. Screenshots of texts, bank statements, messages she'd sent me threatening to make me regret kicking her out. Every detail. because people like my mother thrived in chaos, and the only way to win against chaos was to bring order. 3 days later, HR closed the investigation. Everything checked out, my manager said, sounding both relieved and embarrassed. The claims were completely false. You're in the clear, Olivia. I'm sorry you had to go through that. I smiled tightly. It's okay. I figured it was someone's way of getting my attention. He frowned. Well, whoever it was, they didn't succeed. He was wrong. They had succeeded, just not in the way they intended. That night, I decided to visit them. Not to fight, but to see just how far my mother's manipulation had gone. Their apartment was the same as always, cluttered, with piles of mail and takeout boxes stacked on the counter. When Mom opened the door, she looked surprised to see me. Olivia, she said coolly. Didn't expect you to show your face. I'm not here to fight, I said calmly. I just wanted to talk. Ethan appeared behind her, holding a soda can. What? Did you finally realize you owe us something? I ignored him. Can we sit? Mom hesitated, then motioned toward the couch.
Fine.
But make it quick. I sat down, taking a slow breath. Someone sent fake emails to my company. Tried to get me fired. They used personal details only my family would know. Her eyes flickered, just for a second, before she crossed her arms. Why are you accusing me? I didn't, I said quietly. But I need you to understand something. If this doesn't stop, I'll take action. Legal action. Her jaw dropped. Legal action? Against your mother? If that's what it takes. Ethan scoffed. You're seriously threatening us now? You think you're so important just because you got a fancy job. I turned to him. No, I think I'm important because I worked for everything I have. Something you wouldn't understand. He glared, but I didn't flinch. Mom slammed her hand on the armrest. You ungrateful brat. I carried you in my body for 9 months, and this is how you treat me? You think money gives you the right to disrespect me? I met her stare.
No, Mom.
But respect is a two-way street, and you've been driving one way your whole life. For a moment, she was speechless. Then she stood abruptly. Get out. Don't you ever come back here again. I stood too, calm and steady. Trust me, I won't. When I left, my hands were shaking, but not from fear, from clarity. I realized something that night. I couldn't fix them. I couldn't make them love me in a healthy way. But I could make sure they never hurt me again. So I made a choice. I went to the bank the next morning and closed the shared account I had with my mom from years ago. I changed my passwords, added fraud alerts to my credit, and even moved apartments a month later. It was drastic, but necessary. For the first time in years, my life was quiet, peaceful. I started sleeping better. I started smiling for real again. Until the phone call. It was a Sunday evening when my phone rang. The caller ID said unknown. Hello. Is this Olivia Harris? A stern voice asked. This is Detective Raymond with the city police. We have some questions regarding an incident involving your brother, Ethan. My heart stopped. What happened? He's been arrested, the detective said. Credit card fraud. Your name came up in the investigation. Apparently, one of the cards used was linked to you. I sat down slowly. That's impossible. I canceled all my old cards. There were still transactions under your old number, he said. We'll need you to come down to the station to make a statement. When I hung up, I felt dizzy. My vision blurred. Ethan. He'd used my old credit information, maybe even stolen it before I closed the account. And my mother had probably helped him. When I arrived at the station, the detective handed me a folder. Inside were screenshots of purchases, all traced to my old card, electronics, jewelry, and even a down payment for that new car I'd seen on Mom's social media. I laughed bitterly. They didn't even try to hide it. The detective raised an eyebrow. So, you're confirming this wasn't authorized? Not even close, I said. They stole from me. He nodded. That's what it looks like. We'll need a written statement and your signature to proceed. As I signed the papers, I realized this wasn't just a betrayal anymore. It was a crime. Walking out of the station that night, I felt hollow but steady. For years, I had been their emotional punching bag, their ATM, their scapegoat. But now, the law was finally involved. Still, deep down, I felt no joy in it. Only sadness. Because no matter how justified it was, it didn't erase the fact that the people who were supposed to protect me had turned into my enemies. That night, I sat on my balcony under the city lights, thinking about my childhood. How Mom used to braid my hair before school. How Ethan and I would share ice cream on hot days. How I used to believe love meant sacrifice. Now I knew better. Love, real love, didn't demand obedience or money. It didn't guilt you into servitude. It didn't make you smaller just to make someone else feel big. I promised myself that night I'd never let anyone, not even family, make me feel guilty for my success again. A week later, the detective called again. "Ms. Harris," he said, "Ethan's been charged. He confessed to using your information. He also said your mother told him it was fine because you'd never notice." My throat tightened. She really said that?
Yes.
But don't worry. You're in the clear. We'll handle it from here. When the call ended, I just sat there in silence. There it was, the final piece. Proof that my mother had crossed a line she could never return from. And as much as it hurt, there was relief in the truth. Because now I didn't owe her explanations, forgiveness, or even contact. For the first time, I truly understood what freedom felt like. Not the kind you buy, but the kind you earn. The week after Ethan's arrest felt surreal, like I was watching my life unfold through a foggy window. Everywhere I went, I could feel the whispers, co-workers murmuring as I passed, neighbors glancing in curiosity when I left the building, and even friends asking if everything was okay at home. I wanted to shout, "No, it's not okay." But instead, I smiled politely and kept walking. Because no one needed the full story, not yet. The first time I saw Mom in public after the arrest, it nearly knocked the wind out of me. I was walking through the neighborhood grocery store, picking up essentials, when I saw her in the produce aisle. She looked calm, almost casual, but her eyes widened when they landed on me. "Olivia," she said, forcing a smile. I stopped, feeling the years of frustration bubbling up inside me. "Mom," I said evenly. "I hope Ethan is learning his lesson." Her smile faltered, and for a second, I thought I might see a crack in her armor. But it disappeared almost instantly. "He's going through a rough patch. You know how these things are." I laughed softly, a bitter, hollow sound. "I do. Especially when the rough patch involves using your sister's identity to buy yourself a new life." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't understand family, Olivia. You never have." "That's because family isn't supposed to steal from each other," I said quietly, letting my words sink in. "It isn't supposed to threaten and manipulate. And it isn't supposed to make the people who raised you feel like criminals when they succeed." She said nothing, only turned and walked away, but the tension remained. I knew that she'd be telling anyone who would listen that I was cruel, ungrateful, or spoiled. I also knew that it didn't matter. My truth was mine, and I was finally holding it firmly in my hands. Still, despite the relief of clarity, I couldn't shake the emotional aftermath. The betrayal cut deeper than any argument, any confrontation, because it came from people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. That night, I sat at my desk and stared at the framed photo of my father on my bookshelf. He had died when I was 20, long before Mom's manipulation and Ethan's entitlement reached their peak. He had always encouraged me to work hard, to be independent, and to never let anyone diminish my worth. I remembered him telling me, "Olivia, some people will try to take what's yours, even your happiness. You have to hold on to it tightly." I had held on to that advice all these years, but somehow, it felt different now. It wasn't just about work or success. It was about protecting my entire sense of self from the ones I loved the most. The following week, I received a call from my bank. "Ms. Harris," the representative said, "we've processed the fraud claims on your accounts. All charges have been reversed, and your credit has been secured." I let out a sigh of relief. The legal system had done its job, but my personal life was still a battlefield. Then came the unexpected part. The story of Ethan's arrest went public. A local news outlet ran a piece about a family dispute escalating into criminal activity, mentioning that the suspect had used his sister's credit cards to fund purchases and that the mother allegedly had knowledge of the fraud. I didn't want anyone to see my face associated with the story, but within hours, coworkers were sending me texts, friends were messaging me, and even strangers were commenting online. And then it happened, the public confrontation. I had gone to my favorite cafe to decompress, sitting quietly with my laptop and a cup of black coffee. I was reading emails from HR, organizing my records, and trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Suddenly, I felt a shadow fall across my table. I looked up and froze. Mom was standing there, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, wearing a designer coat she'd known, holding Ethan's hand like he was still a child. "Olivia," she said sweetly, as if she had rehearsed the tone in front of a mirror. "How nice to see you." I didn't move. I just stared. Ethan grinned, a smug, knowing look. "Hey, sis." I took a deep breath and finally spoke. "You're in public. Don't you have somewhere else to be?" Mom's eyes narrowed, and I could sense the manipulation lurking beneath the surface. "I wanted to talk. Face to face. Isn't that what family does?" I stood up, chair scraping against the floor. "Family doesn't steal from family, Mom. Family doesn't manipulate, threaten, or use the law as a weapon. You've proven that." She laughed softly, a sound that was meant to charm, but came across as brittle. "You're being dramatic again. People will understand. They always understand their side of the story first." I shook my head. "No, they won't. They'll see the truth. And the truth is, you can't intimidate me anymore. Not with money, not with threats, not with your so-called love." Ethan tried to interject. "She's overreacting, Mom. Let's just—" "No," I said firmly. "Not this time." A few cafe patrons had begun to notice the confrontation, watching from a distance. Mom's eyes darted nervously for a moment. The mask she had worn for years, the poised, untouchable matriarch, slipped just slightly. "You'll regret this, Olivia," she said, her voice shaking but still trying to sound authoritative. I leaned closer, calm and unwavering. "Maybe. But I'll also sleep better at night knowing I didn't let you control me anymore." The cafe fell silent. Even Ethan seemed unsure, his confident smirk wavering. I turned to leave. Mom called after me, "You'll never forgive us." I didn't look back. I just walked out, feeling lighter than I had in years. The emotional weight of their betrayal, the fear, the anger, the sadness, was finally lifting. Over the next few days, I began rebuilding my life in ways I hadn't allowed myself before. I started going out with friends again, exploring hobbies I had neglected, and reconnecting with colleagues without the constant shadow of family stress looming over me. I even went on a short weekend trip alone, something I'd never done. I booked a small cabin by the lake, where I spent the days hiking, reading, and just being present with myself. It was peaceful, almost surreal, to not have anyone's expectations dictating my actions or my emotions. At night, sitting by the fire with a cup of tea, I reflected on everything that had happened. The theft, the threats, the betrayal. It had all been traumatic, yes. But it had also been a turning point. I realized something crucial. Healing wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving I was right or making my mother and brother feel guilty. Healing was about reclaiming my power, my time, and my peace. And slowly, as I watched the flames flicker in the fireplace, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that I could create boundaries that would protect me. Hope that I could maintain relationships with people who truly cared without being manipulated or used. Hope that I could finally live life on my terms, without fear of family betrayal haunting every decision. That hope was fragile, but it was mine. And for the first time, I felt ready to embrace it fully. Because while my mother and brother had tried to control me through fear, manipulation, and even theft, they had underestimated one thing, me. I was stronger than I had ever realized. And nothing, not even family betrayal, could take that away from me. After the cafe confrontation, I realized that words alone wouldn't be enough. My mother and Ethan had always operated under the assumption that I could be manipulated, that I would yield to guilt or intimidation. But I wasn't going to. Not anymore. I spent the next morning reviewing my finances with a fine-tooth comb. I created separate accounts, updated all my passwords, and ensured that every bit of my income, every investment, and every source of money was under my control. I didn't want to leave any opening, any leverage they could use against me. It was tedious work, but necessary. Each click, each password change, each statement I verified was a step toward reclaiming my autonomy. It felt almost exhilarating to take control in a way I hadn't allowed myself in years. By the afternoon, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't experienced since Ethan's arrest. That night, I allowed myself a small celebration, a quiet dinner at home with a glass of wine, savoring the simple pleasure of a meal I had prepared for myself. No arguments, no expectations, no threats. Just me. The next day, I received a notification from HR at work. They wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss a new project, one that could lead to a significant promotion. It was clear my reputation, my professional credibility, had remained intact despite the recent drama. For years, I had doubted my abilities, partly because of my mother's constant undermining. She had always found subtle ways to make me question myself, a comment about my career choices, a comparison to Ethan, a reminder of how grateful I should be. But now, seeing my career prospects intact, I felt validated in a way I hadn't before. That evening, I sat down to write. Not emails, not work documents, but a personal journal. I wrote about the cafe confrontation, the police involvement, and my steps toward independence. I wrote about the mix of relief and sadness, about the betrayal and the unexpected clarity that followed. Writing helped me process everything, turning raw emotion into something tangible I could analyze and understand. It was in those quiet moments of reflection that I realized something crucial. Boundaries were my new weapon. Not anger, not manipulation, not revenge, but clear, firm boundaries. And to enforce them, I would need strategy. Over the next week, I implemented changes that solidified my independence. I changed my phone number and email addresses, informed my bank and credit card companies of potential threats, and even spoke with my landlord about enhanced security measures. Every precaution was a shield, a declaration that I would no longer be vulnerable to their schemes. One evening, as I was updating my list of contacts, I received a text from Ethan. "Hey sis.
Can we talk?"
I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely. I had no desire to rekindle the toxic dynamics. But another part, the part that remembered my younger self wanting to make peace, was curious. I typed a single word, no. Almost immediately, my phone buzzed again.
"Please."
I messed up.
"I didn't mean to involve Mom like that. Can we meet?"
I read it, felt the tug of old familial loyalty, and deleted it without responding. It wasn't cruelty. It was self-preservation. The days that followed were quiet. My mother attempted contact, a call here, a message there, but I maintained my boundaries. I didn't engage, didn't justify, didn't respond. Each ignored call, each unreturned message, reinforced the reality. I was no longer their emotional puppet. Then, one afternoon, I received an unexpected email from a distant cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. She had been following the news about Ethan's arrest and reached out with concern, asking if I was okay. For the first time, I realized that not all family relationships had to be toxic. Some could be supportive, distant yet caring. I responded cautiously, sharing a brief summary of the events and emphasizing that I was fine, though cautious. She replied almost immediately, offering words of encouragement and even suggesting a small family gathering without Mom or Ethan. The thought warmed me, proof that positive connections could exist, even in the shadow of betrayal. Around the same time, my company approached me about a leadership position in a new initiative. The project required decision-making authority, budget management, and coordination with multiple departments. Accepting it would mean stepping further into the spotlight, solidifying my professional credibility. I considered the offer carefully. For years, I had hesitated to assert myself fully, fearing criticism from family or colleagues. Now, however, I felt a quiet confidence. I accepted. The weeks that followed were busy, but invigorating. I led meetings, presented strategies, and made decisions with a level of confidence I hadn't realized I possessed. Colleagues began to rely on me, seeking my insight and trusting my judgment. For the first time, I felt truly in control, not just of my finances or my family situation, but of my own capabilities and potential. Then came the next confrontation, though I didn't see it coming. It was a Friday evening, and I had just left the office. As I walked to my car, I noticed someone standing near the entrance, partially obscured by shadows. My heart skipped a beat, not out of fear, but recognition.
Mom.
She stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "Olivia," she said softly, almost pleading. I stopped and faced her, keeping a careful distance. "Yes." She hesitated, then continued. I know I've made mistakes. I know I hurt you. But can we talk?
Please.
Just talk." I studied her for a long moment. Her eyes were different, less calculating, more vulnerable. The smugness and control I had seen before were gone, replaced with something that resembled genuine remorse. "I'm listening," I said finally, cautiously. She took a deep breath. "I was wrong. About Ethan, about the threats, about trying to control you. I let my pride and my fears take over, and I lost sight of what mattered. You. I don't expect you to forgive me. Not yet. I want you to know I see what I did." I felt a lump form in my throat. It was hard to reconcile this version of Mom, the one admitting fault, with the woman who had manipulated and intimidated me for so long. "I appreciate that," I said slowly. "But you need to understand something. Apologies don't erase years of betrayal. They don't automatically rebuild trust. You'll have to earn that if it's possible at all." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "I understand." For a moment, we just stood there, two versions of family, one broken, one cautious, both navigating the fragile line between connection and self-preservation. "I don't know what the future holds," I admitted. "But I do know that I won't let the past control me anymore. That's the boundary I've drawn, for you, for Ethan, and for myself." Mom's shoulders slumped. I'll respect that. I promise." We parted with a tentative understanding, not full reconciliation, but a recognition that some bridges could be rebuilt, slowly, cautiously, and on my terms. In the following weeks, I continued to focus on myself. I developed new routines, rekindled friendships, and even started mentoring younger colleagues at work. Guiding others reminded me of my own resilience and reinforced the confidence I had cultivated over the past months. The final breakthrough came one evening when I received a letter in the mail. It was from Ethan, handwritten and carefully folded. I hesitated before opening it, but curiosity won. Inside, he wrote, "Olivia, I know I've caused you pain and chaos. I've realized how selfish I've been and how much I've taken for granted.
I'm sorry.
I don't expect forgiveness. Only hope that someday I can respect the boundaries you've set." I folded the letter back and put it on my desk. No anger, no retaliation. Just clarity. I realized that true power didn't lie in punishment or revenge. It lay in maintaining control over my own life, emotions, and boundaries. I smiled softly, a sense of calm washing over me. For years, I had been defined by others' expectations, manipulations, and betrayals. Now I was defining myself strong, independent, and unapologetically free. The journey hadn't been easy. It had required courage, strategy, and an unwavering commitment to self-respect. But as I looked around my quiet apartment, filled with books, plants, and the soft hum of life, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had survived betrayal. I had faced intimidation. I had set boundaries. And most importantly, I had reclaimed my life. Because in the end, that's what mattered. Not their approval. Not their manipulation. Not even their apologies. What mattered was me, my choices, my strength, and my freedom. And for the first time in years, I was truly, completely, unshakably happy. By the time the following month rolled around, I had fully embraced the life I was building on my own terms. The confrontation at the cafe, the careful financial restructuring, and the small but meaningful boundaries I had set with Mom and Ethan had begun to transform my world. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. Work had become a sanctuary. The new project I had accepted was growing rapidly, and my ideas were finally being recognized for their value. Colleagues who had once overlooked me now sought my input, and for the first time, I felt a professional confidence that wasn't tethered to anyone else's expectations or judgments. I stayed late sometimes, not because I had to, but because I wanted to, because I was genuinely invested in the work and in proving to myself that my abilities were my own. Home life was quieter, but in the best possible way. My apartment had become my haven, a place filled with books, soft lighting, and little touches that reminded me of my autonomy. I had even started cooking more, experimenting with recipes I'd always wanted to try, but had never taken the time to learn. It was a subtle act, but each meal I prepared felt like a small victory, nourishing myself on my own terms, enjoying the peace that came with independence. One evening, while reviewing my finances for the umpteenth time, I realized something I hadn't expected. I was no longer fearful of the next step. Ethan and Mom had assumed that my life could be upended with a single phone call or a visit to my doorstep. But now, even if they tried, their influence was negligible. I had created layers of security, emotional, financial, and personal, that they simply could not penetrate. Then came the surprise call from an old mentor, someone who had seen my potential long before I believed in it myself. "Olivia," he said warmly, "I've been following your career lately, and I'm impressed. There's an opportunity one think you're perfect for, a chance to take full leadership of a department at a major firm. It's high stakes, but I know you can handle it." I felt a rush of exhilaration. This was more than a promotion, it was validation. It was proof that I could succeed entirely on my own merits. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady but excited. "I'll consider it carefully." "I wouldn't wait too long," he added. "They're eager, and they respect decisiveness, something you clearly have in spades." That night, I spent hours weighing the decision. It was a significant move, one that would take me out of my comfort zone and into a leadership role that demanded both strategic thinking and emotional intelligence. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I was ready. Not just ready, but eager. The next morning, I called my mentor and accepted. Immediately, the excitement was tempered by a sense of responsibility. I was stepping into a role that would define the next phase of my career, and I intended to excel. In the weeks that followed, I immersed myself in preparation, reading industry reports, analyzing workflows, and setting goals for the new team I would be managing. Every effort was a reinforcement of my independence, a statement to myself that my achievements were the product of my dedication, intelligence, and resilience, not the manipulation or control of my family. Meanwhile, Mom's attempts to reach me had diminished. Perhaps she had realized that her tactics no longer worked, or perhaps she had understood, finally, that I would not respond to fear or guilt. Ethan remained distant as well, his previous confidence and entitlement replaced by uncertainty. I didn't feel satisfaction in this. I simply felt relief. One afternoon, as I was leaving the office, I noticed a small envelope on my desk. It was unmarked, and I opened it cautiously. Inside was a brief note from Ethan. "Olivia, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I've been thinking a lot. I've realized how much I've taken for granted and how selfish I've been. I'm not asking for forgiveness, only acknowledging my mistakes. I hope you're well." I paused, considering my response. Then, instead of responding immediately, I tucked the note into my bag. For the first time, I realized that closure didn't always require a confrontation or a reply. Sometimes it was enough to simply acknowledge and move forward. As autumn approached, the new role at work began in earnest. My responsibilities were significant, overseeing budgets, mentoring staff, and leading strategic initiatives. I felt a deep sense of accomplishment with every challenge I faced, and each success reinforced my self-worth. It was a stark contrast to the years of feeling undervalued or dismissed by Mom and Ethan. One evening, after a long day of meetings and presentations, I received a message from my cousin, the one who had offered support earlier. She suggested we meet for dinner, a casual gathering, just family members who genuinely cared. I accepted. At dinner, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Connection. Conversation flowed easily. Laughter was genuine, and for the first time, I felt a sense of belonging without the weight of manipulation or expectation. It was a reminder that not all family ties were toxic, that not all connections demanded sacrifice of my autonomy. A few days later, I received a call from Mom. Her tone was hesitant, almost tentative. "Olivia, I know I've caused a lot of pain. I want you to know that I see it now. I understand if you need space, but I'm willing to listen whenever you're ready." I took a deep breath. For a long moment, I considered the past, all the betrayal and manipulation. Then I said, "Mom, I appreciate that. But I need to live my life on my terms now. If you want a relationship with me, it will have to respect the boundaries I've set." She didn't argue. She didn't try to manipulate or guilt me. She simply acknowledged it. "I understand," she said quietly. It was the first time in my life that our interaction felt genuine, rather than a power struggle. I realized that boundaries, once enforced consistently, could reshape even the most challenging relationships. Work continued to thrive, and with my newfound independence, I explored personal growth in other areas as well. I joined a local art class, something I had always wanted to try, but never prioritized. I began exercising regularly, not for appearance, but for the sense of strength it gave me. I took weekend trips alone, exploring nearby towns and reconnecting with the world outside my apartment. Through it all, I noticed a subtle shift in my demeanor. I walked taller, spoke with more confidence, and made decisions without the fear of judgment. I had reclaimed the authority over my life that had been eroded by family dynamics for years. Then came the pivotal moment that truly cemented my independence. One morning, I received an email from the company where I had invested a small sum years ago, a side venture I had kept private from Mom and Ethan. The restaurant, which had been struggling financially, had turned a corner. The owners wanted to recognize me publicly as a silent investor. For a moment, I hesitated. This recognition could attract attention, even from Mom. But then I realized that the acknowledgement was about merit, about contribution, and about independence, all things I had fought to reclaim. The announcement was scheduled for a small ceremony at the restaurant. I attended quietly, choosing professional attire that reflected my confidence, a tailored blazer, crisp blouse, and trousers that felt like armor. When the owner publicly thanked me and acknowledged my role in the restaurant's success, the room erupted in applause. Colleagues, friends, and even strangers cheered, and for the first time in years, I felt recognized solely for my efforts, without interference from family or fear of manipulation. Mom was not there. Ethan was not there. Their absence was a relief, a testament to the life I had built that didn't rely on their approval or validation. As I stood there, accepting congratulations and shaking hands, I felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. I had faced betrayal, intimidation, and manipulation. I had been forced to navigate threats, lies, and emotional manipulation. But through it all, I had emerged stronger, more confident, and fully autonomous. Walking home that evening, I reflected on the journey. The fear, the anger, the sadness, all of it had been a crucible, forging me into a person who could stand firm, who could enforce boundaries, and who could find fulfillment independent of toxic relationships. And in that reflection, I realized something profound. Freedom was not just about financial security or professional success. It was about emotional resilience, about the ability to say no, to walk away, and to prioritize oneself without guilt. I had claimed that freedom. And as I unlocked my apartment door and stepped inside, I knew that nothing could take it away. The weeks after the restaurant recognition felt almost surreal. I had spent so long anticipating confrontation, navigating manipulation, and fearing the influence of Mom and Ethan that I hadn't realized how liberating it could be to live fully on my own terms. Every morning, I woke up not because I had obligations imposed by family, but because I wanted to pursue my life, my passions, and my independence. Work had become more than a career. It had become a proving ground where I could measure my own abilities without interference. I led meetings, made strategic decisions, and mentored colleagues who were eager to learn. With each success, I felt the growing satisfaction of being seen for my contributions, my ideas, my hard work, my determination, rather than being overshadowed by the toxicity of my family. The restaurant recognition had opened doors I hadn't anticipated. Local media had written small features about this silent investor who had contributed to the revival of a beloved neighborhood eatery. Invitations for speaking engagements and panel discussions began to arrive, asking me to share my experiences in entrepreneurship and financial management. For the first time, I realized that my success was not just personal, it could inspire others who had faced similar challenges. Despite the accolades and opportunities, I remained grounded. I had learned that external validation was fleeting. What mattered most was the internal strength I had cultivated. I had built walls where I needed protection, bridges where genuine connection was possible, and an inner compass that guided my decisions without fear of manipulation. One evening, I decided to take a quiet walk along the city streets. The autumn air was crisp, and the leaves crunched underfoot. I reflected on everything that had led me here, the confrontation with Mom and Ethan, the meticulous steps to secure my independence, the professional triumphs, and the emotional growth. Each challenge had forced me to examine myself, my values, and my boundaries. I remembered the moment at the cafe when I finally refused to give in to their demands. The adrenaline, the fear, and the clarity had all intertwined to reveal something I hadn't known about myself, that I could withstand manipulation without compromising who I was. That realization had been pivotal. It had been the first true step toward reclaiming my life. As I walked, I noticed a small park where children played, couples strolled, and neighbors exchanged friendly greetings. I paused, absorbing the simple beauty of life continuing, unaffected by the drama I had endured. And in that stillness, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not for the trials themselves, but for the lessons they had taught me: resilience, assertiveness, and the courage to define my own life. Returning home, I opened my journal, a habit I had cultivated to process emotions and track personal growth. I wrote about the past months, the fear, the confrontation, the strategic planning, and the moments of triumph. But most importantly, I wrote about the peace I was beginning to feel. A peace that came not from the absence of conflict, but from knowing I could navigate it without losing myself. A few days later, I received a brief message from Mom. It was tentative and respectful. "Olivia, I hope you're well. I wanted to say again that I see how I hurt you. I don't expect anything, only to let you know I understand. I'll respect your space." I read it carefully, feeling no rush to respond. For years, I had been conditioned to react immediately, to placate, to defend, or to negotiate. Now, I simply acknowledged the message internally. The power had shifted. I could respond when and if I chose, without guilt or fear. Life continued in this newfound rhythm. I began exploring hobbies and interests that I had neglected for years. Painting became a form of meditation, allowing me to translate emotions into color and form. Weekends were spent exploring local markets, taking small trips, or simply enjoying quiet evenings with a book and a cup of tea. I felt a sense of ownership over my time that I had never experienced before. Work continued to flourish. My team thrived under my guidance, and I became known for my balanced approach: assertive when necessary, empathetic when possible, and strategic in every decision. Colleagues began seeking mentorship, and I embraced it with genuine enthusiasm, finding joy in helping others navigate their professional paths. One evening, as I prepared dinner, I received a call from a local community organization. They wanted me to speak at an upcoming event about financial literacy and personal empowerment. I agreed, recognizing the opportunity not only to share my expertise, but also to model resilience and independence to others who might face familial or personal obstacles. The night before the event, I reflected on my journey. I remembered the raw emotions, the betrayal, and the fear that had once defined my life. And I realized that those experiences, painful as they were, had shaped the woman I had become: confident, self-reliant, and empowered. The speaking engagement was a turning point. As I stood on the small stage, addressing an audience eager to hear my story, I felt a mixture of nerves and exhilaration. I spoke candidly about the challenges of navigating family betrayal, the importance of setting boundaries, and the power of self-determination. I shared the lessons I had learned about resilience, financial independence, and emotional fortitude. Afterward, audience members approached me, thanking me for my honesty and vulnerability. Some shared their own experiences of manipulation or familial pressure, and I realized that my story had resonance beyond my personal life. I had transformed pain into purpose, and in doing so, I had created a ripple effect of empowerment. Returning home that night, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The accolades, the recognition, and the professional opportunities were all meaningful, but what mattered most was the quiet strength I had cultivated. I no longer needed external validation to feel worthy or capable. I had reclaimed my narrative, and in doing so, I had rewritten the rules of my life. Mom's messages became less frequent, and I responded only when I felt it appropriate. The dynamic that had once dominated my life, fear, guilt, and obligation, had been replaced by a cautious, measured understanding. She recognized the boundaries I had set, and for the first time, our interactions were based on respect rather than control. Ethan remained distant. I didn't feel anger toward him, only clarity. The entitlement and manipulation that had characterized our relationship no longer had a place in my life. I could care without being controlled. I could acknowledge without being manipulated. That distinction, once elusive, was now firmly ingrained in my understanding of healthy relationships. As the months progressed, I continued to build a life centered on independence, personal growth, and meaningful connections. Friendships deepened, professional opportunities expanded, and my sense of self-worth solidified. I found joy in small moments: a quiet walk at dusk, the laughter of friends, the satisfaction of a project well executed. Through all of it, I never forgot the lessons of betrayal. They were my compass, guiding me toward decisions that honored my values and protected my autonomy. I had learned that true strength lay not in revenge, nor in retaliation, but in steadfast self-respect, clear boundaries, and unwavering dedication to one's own growth. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the city lights shimmer, I felt a profound sense of peace. The tumult of the past, the manipulation, the threats, the confrontations, felt distant, almost surreal. I had navigated the storm and emerged not broken, but whole. I thought of my younger self, the girl who had feared confrontation, who had questioned her worth, and who had been overshadowed by family drama. I wished I could tell her what I now knew: that independence was possible, that strength could be cultivated, and that the power to define one's life resided within, not in the approval or control of others. In that moment, I understood that my journey had not just been about confronting betrayal or asserting financial independence. It had been about reclaiming my voice, my choices, and my right to live authentically. Every challenge, every heartbreak, every strategic decision had led me here, to a life defined not by fear or manipulation, but by empowerment and clarity. I smiled softly, a sense of gratitude and triumph washing over me. For years, I had been weighed down by expectations, guilt, and the controlling influence of family. Now, I was free, emotionally, financially, and spiritually. I had created boundaries, nurtured my own growth, and embraced the full spectrum of who I was. And in that freedom, I realized something profound. I didn't need revenge to feel victorious. I didn't need apologies to feel validated. I didn't need their approval to feel worthy. The victory was mine simply because I had survived, grown, and chosen myself every single step of the way. The journey hadn't been easy. It had demanded courage, persistence, and an unwavering belief in my own worth. But as I gazed at the city skyline, the hum of life continuing around me, I felt a deep, unshakable satisfaction. I had taken control, forged independence, and cultivated a life of purpose and peace. And that, I realized, was the most profound form of triumph. No longer defined by betrayal or manipulation, I had claimed my freedom. No longer swayed by fear or expectation, I had embraced my strength. And no longer weighed down by guilt or obligation, I had discovered joy in living authentically. The past would always be a part of me, but it no longer controlled me. I had the power, the clarity, and the resilience to navigate the future on my own terms. And for the first time, I knew that nothing could take that away.